I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, no snow on the ground for the latest snow survey of the season. Next, a historic order from the governor to save California from its drought emergency.
Beyond Blackfish, the author behind a new book critical of SeaWorld now finds himself at the center of a new controversy. We'll have more on a video leak that has John Hargrove changing gears and his response to the fallout. I'm Amitha Sharma, also helping students pay for college. We talked to State Senator Marty Block about his plan to fund higher education.
Cheers, San Diego. You knew we had great beer in our backyard. Next, the numbers that show it's among the best in the nation. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now.
It's going to save water by mandating real reductions in a number of areas. It's going to affect golf courses, people's lawns, universities, campuses, all sorts of institutions.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. There, the governor, Jerry Brown. The drought in California is now a state of emergency. The lowest snowpack ever recorded on the Sierra prompted a sweeping executive order from Governor Brown today. It imposes mandatory water restrictions across the state up to 25%. Reporter Lonnie Rivera shows us how California copes with a historic drought and water shortage.
The proof is in the picture. A sea of green and brown show a new normal for California.
And as you can clearly see, there is no snow at this location. And this is the first year in its measurements going back to 1942 where this snow course has been bare, no snow at all.
Even just comparing previous April's
125
to today give a glimpse of this historic drought. It's forced Governor Brown to sign an executive order calling for mandatory statewide water reductions by 25%.
People should realize we're in a new era. The idea of your nice little green grass getting lots of water every day, that's going to be a thing of the past.
Just to give you some perspective, here's a view of runoff coming from the mountain, which shows how really important it is because California's snowpack provides 30% of the state's water supply. The governor says all Californians should cut back, even himself.
Turning off that faucet a little quicker, getting out of the shower a little faster, and not flushing the toilet every time.
From Echo Summit, Lonnie Rivera reporting.
And our coverage of California's drought emergency continues on the PBS NewsHour. Hari Srinivasan speaks with the governor about what the state's drought means for the rest of the country.
What's happening in California is one variant of the change in weather and climate. And so other places have to look at this and understand we are, when I say we, humankind all over the world is putting billions of tons of chemical, CO2, methane, and other things, other greenhouse gases, and that's warming and disrupting the very delicate web of life and balance in the hydrological cycle and in the climate.
And you can see more of the governor's conversation tonight on PBS NewsHour. That begins at 7 o'clock. It's a major detour for a book tour. A former orca trainer at SeaWorld is now on the defensive. This after his old company releases an explosive video. Amitha Sharma has the story.
John Hargrove was prominently featured in the documentary Blackfish. He worked at SeaWorld for 12 years. He's been on tour for his book Beneath the Surface, Killer Whales, SeaWorld, and the Truth Beyond Blackfish, where he accuses SeaWorld of abusing its killer whales. In response, Vice President of Communications for SeaWorld Entertainment, Fred Jacobs, sent an email to KPBS where he accuses Hargrove of inaccuracies and contradictions and disputes the claim SeaWorld uses the denial of food as a training technique. SeaWorld also released a 5-year-old video showing Hargrove intoxicated and repeatedly using racial epithets. Hargrove addressed that video today on KPBS Midday Edition.
Watching it myself, I cringed when I would hear myself say these things. That's just simply no dancing around it. That's not a word that should be used. You just don't use that word. You don't use it when you're angry. You don't use it when you're intoxicated and you're obnoxious and you think you're being funny, because you're not being funny. You just don't use that word. So I regret it. I wish that didn't happen.
Hargrove says in his book he explains what he calls the culture of SeaWorld, how animals and people are treated.
I was happy at SeaWorld for a long time, and I believed in everything that they said. But then slowly over time, you see the damaging effects of captivity on these animals, the worn-down teeth, the collapsed dorsal fins, us having to drill the teeth, all the medications we had to have the whales on, and then when they started separating mothers from their calves, and then the forced artificial inseminations, and often even at unnatural ages. All of these things over time, you start to think for yourself, and you realize, these things are just not morally and ethically acceptable.
Hargrove was scheduled for a book signing tonight at Warwick's. The bookstore canceled after the video surfaced. I'm Amitha Sharma, KPBS News.
There's a new federal ruling against the U.S. Navy calling for more protection of whales, dolphins, and other marine mammals. A judge says federal wildlife officials violated environmental laws. This is when they allowed the Navy to train in waters near Hawaii and Southern California. Environmental groups filed a lawsuit trying to stop training exercises with explosives. The judge ruled the Navy failed to find alternate sites and options that would keep marine life out of harm's way. Another plan to keep the Bolts in San Diego. City Councilman Scott Sherman proposed a grand idea today for a new stadium, wait for it, in Mission Valley. Sherman wants to turn the 166-acre Qualcomm site into a mixed-use development.
This would be a spot to go to whether there's a game or not, with all the nightlife and other amenities that would be happening, the parks and everything else that would be here.
Funding for the idea includes dollars from the Chargers, NFL, naming rights, personal seat licenses, and private investors. The proposal also includes a third-party analysis. It shows land sales at the site and tax revenues could generate hundreds of millions of dollars. Sherman says his plan is meant to inform the mayor's stadium advisory group. They're set to present a final funding proposal in May. They're trying to keep the Raiders in Oakland. The city council there approved key measures to construct a new football stadium for the team, but hurdles remain in Oakland. This includes locking in a deal with the Raiders. The team is still looking at building a possible stadium with the Chargers in the city of Carson. The race is on for San Diego tech companies to apply for a limited number of H1B visas so they can hire skilled foreign workers next year. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero says the federal government is now accepting applications.
Skilled foreign workers are hired by hundreds of San Diego tech companies, including Qualcomm, and applications are expected to increase this year because the economy is growing. Last year, nearly 5,000 H1B visa applications were filed by San Diego County businesses alone. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services provides only 65,000 H1B visas nationwide for foreign workers with skills in math, science, and similar specialty fields. It offers an additional 20,000 for those with a U.S. master's degree. The limited number of visas available means most local businesses can't attract as much foreign talent as they might like. Immigration lawyers estimate the federal government will review less than half of all applications. A lottery system will determine which ones will even be considered. The companies have just 5 days to apply. If they miss out now, they'll have to wait until next year to hire skilled foreign workers. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
California's Board of Food and Agriculture is going international. Members held a meeting yesterday in Tijuana with representatives from both sides of the border. They discussed several topics ranging from animal safety to economics. Mexico is a major importer of California products. In 2013, the country received more than half of the state's cotton exports and 20% of California's dairy products. There's another warning on the highways for tractor trailers. Experts say they're driving faster than what their tires can handle. Associated Press reporter Luke Sheridan explains why highway officials are playing catch-up with this trend.
A high-stakes gamble on the nation's highways. Nearly 14 states, mainly in the West, now have speed limits of 75 miles per hour, 85 in parts of Texas. The problem, 75 miles per hour is the maximum speed nearly all truck tires are designed to handle.
States tend to base speed limits on a political decision, regardless of the physics of what happens when vehicles crash, which they inevitably will.
The Associated Press uncovered the disconnect after a National Highway Traffic Safety Administration probe concluded that excessive speed, not tires, were the likely cause of blowouts involving certain Michelin tires, something that didn't come as a surprise to this truck driver in Texas.
And you have 40,000 pounds, 45,000 pounds, and you rolling 75 in the pavement have 120 degrees, you know, you're going to have problems. You need to stop every 120 miles and let the tire cool down.
Industry experts say costs are prohibitive for manufacturers to make tires that can handle higher speeds. For now, NHTSA contends the most effective solution is regulation, to require devices that would prevent trucks from going over 75 miles per hour, which many trucking companies already use.
Company trucks are governed at a speed limit set at 68 miles an hour, so we never get to go the cruising speed or the posted speeds.
Highway officials in 3 states that allow trucks to go 80 miles per hour or faster have either disregarded tire safety regulations, wouldn't answer questions about them, or told the AP they were unaware of them.
The problem is that all the decision-making and accountability is separated, and it should be all brought together, and that should be the leadership of Department of Transportation.
While tire and trucking industry groups blame the states for allowing unsafe speeds, they do agree that the drivers should be aware of tire limitations, something NHTSA is considering, requiring maximum speeds to be listed on the sidewalls of all truck tires. Luke Sheridan, The Associated Press.
Police officers in San Diego are stepping up patrols. They want to keep distracted drivers off the roads. This is part of a county-wide campaign. Officers are on the lookout for drivers who are texting, eating, or doing anything other than keeping their eyes and attention on the road. Experts say in the average time it takes to check a text message, a car will travel more than the length of a football field. At least 80% of traffic crashes involve some type of distraction. Four county breweries are ranked among the top 50 craft companies in the U.S. The list from the Brewers Association is based on the volume of beer sales. Stone Brewing Company, based in Escondido, sold enough last year to be ranked among the top 10 beer makers in the country. Stone Brewing Company is all about big beers, big taste, and taking different flavors and packing them into a bottle.
We like making beers that are bold, flavorful, hop-centric, not brewing beers according to standards or brewing styles.
It's apparently working, with sales topping $135 million in 2013, and fans coming from out of town just to get a taste.
I think it's a delicious brew. It's an alt beer, a German style, real malty, and I think they got it dead on. It's really a beautiful, beautiful beer.
Stone beers can be found in 41 states and 7 countries, not to mention Liberty Station right here in Point Loma. Cheers. Along with Stone, 3 other craft companies from San Diego made the top 50 brewers list: Ballast Point, Carl Strauss, and Green Flash Brewing Companies. Stone is already San Diego's largest brewery, with plans to become the first American-owned beer maker in Berlin next year, as well as plans to expand to the East Coast.
So our location in Richmond, Virginia, we anticipate to start brewing in early 2016.
That's a good word for Richard Eckert, who happens to live there.
Thanks for sharing that news. I'm sitting around in Virginia and I didn't know it, but I'll certainly spread the word when I get back there. I can't wait to see it.
Stone Brewing Company employs about 1,000 people, and last year they produced 213,000 barrels of beer. We're just days away from the NCAA Final Four games in Indianapolis. All the movers and shakers in college hoops typically fly in to watch the action, except this year. Associated Press reporter Sandy Kozel shows us more of the fallout from the state's new religious freedom law.
With the NCAA Final Four basketball championship coming up in Indianapolis, last year's winning head coach is staying away. University of Connecticut basketball coach Kevin Ollie is honoring his state's ban on official travel to Indiana after that state passed a law that critics say allows discrimination against gays. UConn isn't in this year's Final Four, but coaches usually go for meetings and events.
There are gay men and gay women who participate in intercollegiate sports. What kind of message does it send when we're saying we're going to schedule events in states that openly discriminate against gay people?
Indiana's governor has asked his state legislature to revise the religious freedom law. It prohibits any laws that substantially burden a person's ability to follow religious beliefs. Critics say it's a license to discriminate against gays. Governor Mike Pence says that's not true, but he wants the law clarified.
The intent of the law when I signed it was to give the courts in our state the highest level of scrutiny in cases where people feel that their religious liberty is being infringed upon by government action.
Democrats in the Indiana legislature want the law repealed. Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
There's another push to boost voter turnout in California. Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez from San Diego is supporting a bill. It would automatically register every Californian with a driver's license. The motor law is modeled after a new law in Oregon. It uses DMV data to automatically register eligible voters. California's elections office says the state has nearly 7 million eligible but unregistered voters. Experts say the measure is helpful, but not enough.
No, I don't think it's a silver bullet. It's not a panacea, but it is a significant change. It could be a game changer in the way that all these people who currently are not being courted by anybody, not being invited to participate by anybody, will suddenly have the door open for them.
Opponents of the measure have raised privacy concerns. After years of cuts, a state senator from San Diego proposes a plan to increase funding for higher education. The plan comes at a time when UC President Janet Napolitano has proposed drastic measures to keep the system financially sound. Amitha Sharma has more.
The 5-year, 28% tuition hike for the UC system is leaving parents and students with sticker shock. San Diego's Democratic State Senator Marty Block has co-authored a bill to ease the pain. He joins me now with student Ryan Heiler. He's Associate Vice President of Student Advocacy at UC San Diego. Senator, this bill would not prohibit the tuition increase, so how exactly, SB 15, if it passes, how exactly would it help students?
What this bill does is offers millions of dollars to the UC and the CSU contingent upon the UC rejecting its own proposed tuition increase. So while it doesn't demand that they not increase tuition, it basically gives them a very simple choice. Get a lot of money from the state or a little bit of money from your students.
So, Ryan, what are your fellow students at UC San Diego saying about this 5-year, 28% tuition hike?
I mean, all of the students at UC San Diego are pretty against it and pretty, we're all knowing that, or we all know how difficult these extra costs are going to put on students. And it's really just going to cut the accessibility of the UC San Diego to lower income students.
So, Senator, there's been some criticism of this bill in that it could eliminate the middle class scholarship. How do you propose to go around that?
Yeah, I don't think it needs to eliminate the middle class scholarship. We have a surplus this year in the state budget. We've had very bad budget years the last 5 or 6 years, and we've cut higher education. Now that the state has money, I think it's incumbent upon the state to use those dollars to help students like Ryan, students here at San Diego State, so they can succeed, so they can get the classes they need and graduate in 4 years. And we can do that without touching the middle class scholarship.
There's scholarships and then there are loans. Have you taken out loans, Ryan?
Yeah, I've had to take out loans.
And how much will you owe by the time you graduate?
By the time I graduate, I'm not too sure, but it probably will be around $25,000. But that's really, it should be more, but I'm lucky to have received the Cal Grant, so I don't have to pay that money back, and so that's helped me cover the cost a lot since I don't get any additional from my family.
Senator, what kind of support do you think you have for this bill with your colleagues, with the CSU system, within the governor's office, and from UC President Janet Napolitano?
Well, I think the CSU system will support the bill when it comes to its first hearing, which is just a couple of weeks down the road. We're gathering other support right now, but we're just starting the process, so we don't really have a full list of supporters yet. But students like Ryan up and down the state are very supportive because Ryan was very smart. He took out loans so that he could graduate in 4 years. Some students go 5 or 6 years, and it costs them about $55,000 a year for every extra year they're in school because they're not out earning wages. Instead, they're paying for classes, for books. It's just the wrong way to go. If you can finish in 4 years, you're going to save money. It's worth taking out a little bit of loan money now.
How much control does the state Senate have over an issue like this, given the fact that the governor has enormous power over the budget, and he has not yet committed to the $100 million the UC system says it needs in order to avoid a tuition hike next year?
Well, the process in Sacramento is really clear. It's the governor, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the pro tem, the leader of the Senate, who sit down and negotiate a budget. I chair the Education Budget Subcommittee in the Senate, so I'll be making my recommendations about education funding, which will include money to fund SB 15. There'll be a lot of give and take between the governor and the pro tem and the speaker. That will take place during the month of May into early June, and then we'll see what the outcome is. But I think the governor might resonate to this because he's all for efficiency in higher education and getting students in and out in 4 years, making space available to those high school graduates and community college transfers behind them because they're now out of school and in the workforce. It just makes sense.
So how receptive are people preliminarily?
I'm finding people very receptive. Very few seem to be opposed to the bill when you explain it to them. We just haven't gotten out and had the opportunity to explain very much yet, which is why I'm really happy to be here with you.
Senator Ryan, thanks so much for coming on the program.
I'm Judy Woodruff on the next News Hour. Investing in improving the education of young men of color. But are girls being left out? That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
Selfies capture a given moment in time unlike any other. Now, thanks to drones, popular culture's latest phenomenon is reaching new heights, as Associated Press reporter Emily Roseman shows us. The selfie obsession may be going too far.
Everywhere you look, someone is taking a selfie, capturing everything from mundane moments to magical memories.
It's very simple, you know. You don't need to ask someone to take a photo.
All of our phones have this technology now, and we're just trying to archive things in a different way. It's our way of saying, we were here, this happened, this mattered to us.
The selfie obsession is now reaching new heights, thanks to drones, otherwise known as dronies. Chris Anderson of 3D Robotics considers this era of self-documentation the golden age of personal storytelling.
Goes into the sky, gives you that panorama, that context. Puts you in your surroundings in a way that your arm never could. It's a way to get more cinematic Hollywood-style video of your life.
But there are signs some have taken the selfie craze too far.
They often are not aware of other people. They're not respectful of the others. With the sticks all over the place, and when I want to take my shot, there are sticks everywhere.
Museums, from the Smithsonian Institution to inside the ancient walls of Rome's Colosseum, now ban selfie sticks to protect artworks and visitors. Social media and popular culture professor Steph Woods cautions against letting photos become more important than what you're doing.
If we feel as though we can only present ourselves with our best face forward and our best selfie forward, that's unrealistic. We know that we don't always look perfect every day. We're human.
But with changing technology, selfie fans, no doubt, will want to keep getting their hands on, or off, the latest gadget to document their every move. Emily Roseman, The Associated Press.
Oh, excuse me. I was taking a selfie. We're looking at mild spring weather in San Diego for the next few days. Looking at 70s, low 80s along the beaches by afternoon. A mix of sun and clouds for the inland valleys with 70s and 80s there. Much cooler, though, in the mountains. 60s expected for the next few days. 80s and 90s for the desert. Let's recap our top stories tonight. The lowest snowpack ever recorded during the drought prompted new action from Governor Jerry Brown. Today, he issued an executive order calling for statewide mandatory water restrictions. The order calls for all of us here in California to reduce water usage by 25%. San Diego tech companies that hired skilled foreign workers can apply for H1B visas this week, but business leaders say the limited number of visas will make it difficult for them to bring in enough workers to fill their openings. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services offers only 65,000 visas for the nation. A lottery system will determine which applications will be reviewed. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom on Morning Edition. Old cars in the U.S. can be fixed up and sold for a profit in Guatemala. The only trick is driving them across Mexico and facing corrupt officials. We'll show you another face of the border economy. That's tomorrow morning on the radio, KPBS Morning Edition. You can find tonight's stories on Evening Edition on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.